Hey guys, welcome back to Revolution XRC and welcome to this new build series on this Vanquish H10 Optic Kit. In this part of the series, we will cover building the axles, the front and the rear. For that, you'll need bags A and B. For bag A, step 1, you'll need the following pieces. You'll need your ring gear, your spool, your two 7x14 by 3.5 bearings. You'll need 6 M2 by 8 cap head screws, these two parts here, and thread lock. That completes step A1. For step A2, you'll need the following. You'll need your pinion gear, you'll need your third member, you'll need one 5x14 by 5 bearing, one 5x11 by 4 bearing, and 4 M3 by 10 button head screws. You also need the grease for the gears. And that completes step A2. For step A3, you'll need the following. You'll need the front axle housing, two 5x11 by 4 bearings, 4 M2.5 by 10 cap head screws, and 2 M2.5 by 8 cap head screws. Now the manual will say these are M2.5 by 6, but the bag provides 2 M2.5 by 8s. And that completes step A3. For step A4, you'll need the following. You'll need these pieces right here and these two M2.5 by 10 countersunk screws. And that completes step A4. Now we're actually going to move on to step A6 before we do step A5 because that involves adding the servo. You can use a servo of your choice. I am going to be using the Armory RC Katana 500 ounce servo. I really like the servo. It's fast and it's got plenty of power. You'll also need the behind the axle servo mount. You'll need these two pieces right here, 4 M3x16 button head screws, and it's very interesting, but the manual says that the servo horn is not included in the kit, but it actually was included in the kit. But what was not included was the M3x10 button head screw that you will need to use to secure the servo horn. There will be a link in the description below to where you can find this servo. Alright, now when mounting the servo, this is the axle side. Make sure that the servo horn area is towards the rear. So it should be like this. Alright, I found an issue with step A6 here. Now step A6, they tell you to use 4 M3x16 button head screws. And that's what's provided with the kit. But I found them to be too long, even with the spacers and the servo. What happened was it just started to punch through the plastic right here. You can see that punch through. So I will not be using these M3x16s. I will try using these M3x14s, and these are still too long. I'll go with M3x12s. So I just have these M3x14s from one of my screw kits, so I'll be using these instead. Alright, and that completes step A6. For step 5, you'll need these 4 M2x10 cap head screws, these 3 M3x14 button head screws, and these 2 retainers. And that completes step A5. For step A7, you'll need the 2 remaining M3x14 button head screws from this bag. And that completes step A7. For step A8, you'll need the following parts. You'll need the longer universal shaft, the wheel hex, the pin for the wheel hex, the M3x3 grub screw, these 2 kingpin screws, one 10x15x4 bearing and one 5x11x4 bearing, and the passenger side knuckle. And that completes step A8. For step A9, once again you'll need the wheel hex, the pin for the wheel hex, the M3x3 grub screw, the 10x15x4 bearing, the 5x11x4 bearing, the 2 kingpin screws, but for this step you'll need the shorter universal and the driver's side knuckle. Alright, that completes step A9. For step A10, you'll need the following. You'll need the 2 rods right here, 2 M3x10 button head screws, 2 M3x16 button head screws, these 2 washers, 2 sets of pivot balls with the flanges, and 2 sets of pivot balls without the flanges. Now you'll put one of each pivot ball on each rod end, or rod. So you should have one flangeless pivot ball and one flange pivot ball on each side. The side without the flange should go into the hydraulic steering arm right here. Alright, it took a little bit of coaxing, but I was able to slide that pivot ball into that fork right there on both sides. So do that first, it will make it easier for you. And that completes step A10. For step A11, you'll need the steering link. You'll need the 2 rod ends for that steering link. You'll need 1 M3 by 16 button head screw, 1 M3 by 12 button head screw, and 2 pivot balls. Make sure you measure out the length of the rod or the steering link. You could use the manual and get the space between the 2 rod ends, same as the manual, or you could just use a caliper and measure it out. But once you're done with that, it's time to put the pivot balls on. And that completes step A11. That completes the front axle, and we're ready to move on to the rear axle. For the rear axle, you'll need bag B. For step A1, you'll need the following pieces. You'll need the spool, the ring gear, the 2 7x14 by 3.5 bearings, these 6 M2 by 8 cap head screws, and these 2 spool retainers. You'll also need thread lock for the spool screws or diff screws. That completes step B1. For step B2, you'll need the following. You'll need one 5x14x5 bearing. You'll need one 5x11x4 bearing. You'll also need the third member housing, the pinion gear, and these 4 M3x10 button head screws, as well as grease. That completes step B2. For step B3, you'll need the rear axle housing as well as 4 M2.5x10 cap head screws. That completes step B3. For step B4 and 5, you'll need the following. You'll need the axle shaft for each side, you'll need the wheel hex for each side, the pin for each side, this washer for each side, the lockout for each side, this 5x11x4 bearing for each side, 2 M3x6 button head screws for each side, and for the diff housing for the pumpkin, you'll need the oil fill drain plug as well as a tool to secure that onto your axle pumpkin. So I'll do steps B4 and B5 together. Forgot you'll also need the grub screws for each side as well. Alright, that completes step B4. Let's go ahead and do the other side, which is step B5. And that completes step B5. So that is steps B4 and 5 completed, and that also completes the rear axle. This also completes the first part of this H10 Optic Kit build series, the axles with flying video. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell for future parts of this H10 Optic Kit build series.